Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump is finally doing it. President Trump has had enough of all of the lawlessness, mayhem, and chaos that's been taking place in all of our nation's beautiful cities, and so now he's going to do something about it. And by the way, I think you're going to like what we're talking about today, so make sure to stick around for today's entire video because we have some big stuff to talk about. Now, as you all know, President Trump has recently deployed the National Guard to the streets of Washington, D.C., and as a consequence, crime has pretty much disappeared altogether, and not one single homicide has taken place since the deployment. And worth taking note of real quick, prior to President Trump and the National Guard getting involved, over 4 people were gunned down in Washington, D.C. each and every week, which is over 200 people per year. So quite literally, President Trump and the National Guard are out here on the streets of D.C. saving lives. And so because of this massive success that we've seen in Washington, D.C., now President Trump is turning his gaze to all of our nation's other crime-ridden, Democrat-governed cities. In fact, take a look at this.
1,700 National Guard troops are now set to mobilize across 19 states over the coming weeks. They are going to help Homeland Security execute a sweeping federal crime and immigration crackdown that is underway now. The order is effective August through mid-November, Fox News is learning. And a U.S. defense official tells Jackie Heinrich and Liz Frieden the National Guard being mobilized will effectively serve as a support pillar.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been praying for our great American cities to finally become safe again, I think your prayers are about to be answered. But as it would seem, to kick things off, President Trump has one city specifically in mind. Take a look.
As you all know, Chicago's a killing field right now. And they don't acknowledge it. And they say, we don't need him. Freedom, freedom. He's a dictator. He's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. I don't like a dictator. I'm not a dictator. I'm a man with great common sense and I'm a smart person. And when I see what's happening to our cities, and then you send in troops, instead of being praised, they're saying you're trying to take over the republic. These people are sick. But I'm really saying, and I say this to all of you, in a certain way, we should wait to be asked because they have cities that are so under control, out of control. So we go in and fix it. They take the full credit for it, and they go out and say, I heard it this morning. They're saying how well they've done over the last 10-day period, that they set record lows. They don't say that we're there with very tough people, by the way. They have to pass the toughness test. Otherwise, they're not working for us.
And so to be very clear, who are those tough people? Yeah, the U.S. National Guard. And like we said earlier, so far they've been doing a pretty good job in Washington, D.C. But you know what? Take a look at what President Trump just had to say about Chicago's incompetent, radically progressive mayor, Brandon Johnson.
He should be requesting us to be there. And the governor of Illinois should be. Chicago's a disaster. And the governor of Illinois should say, President, would you do us the honor of cleaning up our city? We need help. They need help. They need help.
So you
we may wait. We may or may not. We may just go in and do it, which is probably what we should do. The problem is, it's not nice when you go in and do it and somebody else is standing there saying, as we give great results, say, we don't want the military. They need help badly. Chicago desperately needs help. Just look at the crime statistics.
And so you know what? Let's do that. Why don't we go ahead and actually take a look at Chicago's crime statistics? Remember how we said that there are 4 homicides per week in Washington, D.C.? Well, in Chicago, they've got over 8 homicides per week. What that means is that over 400 people per year are losing their lives in Chicago, all because of the incompetence of Chicago's radically progressive leadership. And so really, given just how crime-ridden Chicago really is, if President Trump sends out the National Guard, it would quite frankly be the best thing to happen to Chicago in decades. But now, folks, as all of this has been unfolding, the mayor of Chicago actually decided to release a public statement that I think all of you guys are going to want to take a look at. But first, I do want to say real quick that if you folks enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. But okay, check this out.
And so, look, we're going to remain firm. We'll take legal action. But the people in this city are accustomed to rising up against tyranny. And if that's necessary, I believe that the people of Chicago will stand firm alongside of me as I work every single day to protect the people of this city.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Mayor Brandon Johnson wants all of the people of Chicago to rise up against President Trump's evil fascist tyranny. He also had the audacity to say that he's been working to protect everyone in the city. As if we don't all know for a fact that Chicago is one of the most crime-ridden, violent, unsafe cities in the entire nation. And once again, why is that? Well, it's because Chicago hasn't had a Republican mayor since 1931. And no, I'm not kidding. Folks, Chicago has been governed by Democrats for almost 100 consecutive years. How's that been going? Yeah, not so well. But so like we've been saying, it's not just Chicago that has all of these problems. Regrettably, it's actually dozens of cities all across our entire nation. In fact, here's a list of the top 10 most violent cities in the country. And the sad part is, because of the unchecked and unpunished crime, all of these cities have effectively become third world hellholes. Baltimore, for instance, has a violent crime rate that's 3 times higher than the national average. It's absolutely insane. But so on that note, take a look at what the governor of Maryland recently had to say about Baltimore. Take a look.
What historically has been Baltimore's greatest challenge? Why has Baltimore had a crime problem over the past 3-4 decades?
Well, I think oftentimes Baltimore's had a neglect problem. You know, and I think about Baltimore used to be a city of 920,000 people. Baltimore is now a city of just under 600,000. In fact, if you look at the past few decades, Baltimore's had one of the most precipitous drops in population that we have seen in our country, with the exception of Cleveland and Detroit.
Folks, did you catch that? Over the last couple of decades, over 300,000 people have fled the city of Baltimore because the crime has gotten just so out of control. Once again, this is what happens when the radically progressive Democrats get in control. Every single city that they can get their hands on ends up becoming a lawless, anti-American ghetto. And now, folks, here's something very important that needs to be said. I know that it's very easy to say, well, who cares? I don't live in a city. I don't live in Baltimore or Chicago. I live all the way out in the suburbs or even the countryside. Not my problem. Well, as we've seen time and time again, if we don't stop the cultural rot that is progressivism, then it just continues to spread out across the entire country, meaning that it's only a matter of time before it ends up on your doorstep. And so this is why it's such a big deal that President Trump is mobilizing the National Guard to actually clean these cities up. He's the first president that we've had, maybe ever, that actually understands just how big of a problem all of this stuff really is. And so now he's going to do something about it. And so, ladies and gentlemen, on a final note here, as I like to say, this is what it looks like to finally put America first.